again guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video we are headed off on an outing in the Just Flight 146 Professional. I thought I'd get a little bit of time back in the X-Plane version of the aircraft to help get re-familiarised with the jet and its systems. As is hopefully made clear in my videos, I generally like to get up to speed with an aircraft before I review it. So with that in mind, today we're going to be taking the Just Flight 146 Professional on a sector within X-Plane 11. We're currently on the ground at Birmingham and we're going to be taking the aircraft up towards Glasgow. We're fairly well loaded up, we've got around 80 passengers on board and quite a bit of cargo as well. All up, the takeoff weight of the aircraft will be around 40.5 tonnes. We're going to be cruising our way over at flight level 280, the weather's nice all the way up to Glasgow. We're holding Edinburgh as our alternate and again the weather's just fine there. So with that in mind we're going to be uploading 5.8 tonnes of fuel and we should be airborne for just a little bit under 1 hour. I know that many of you are Microsoft Flight Simulator users by preference, but I highly recommend taking at least a little look at X-Plane. We're going to be using the absolutely excellent enhanced Skyscapes for the sim. For me, the add-on fixes up the very subpar looking weather in X-Plane an absolute treat, and as a result I've actually been flying quite a bit in X-Plane recently. You'll see a few more videos coming on the channel soon. Lastly, this video will effectively be part 1 in what could loosely be termed a series. As we do now have a few study level aircraft shortly coming into Microsoft Flight Simulator, I thought it would be good fun and hopefully quite interesting to get acquainted with the airframes ahead of time. So today we're obviously looking at the BAE 146, in a later video we'll be taking an outing in the Zibo 737 ahead of PMDG's 737 release. Again though, today focusing on the 146, it's an add-on that I really enjoy. Just Flight have done an absolutely brilliant job with it in X-Plane, and by all accounts the Microsoft Flight Simulator version of the aircraft is really going to raise the bar once again. But hopefully today's video will give you some idea as to the level of quality invested in the jet already. As always, if you do enjoy the video then please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. We've more or less arrived at the jet cold and dark, so we'll make our way up to the cockpit and we'll begin our pre-flight prep. So good morning and welcome back once again to the cockpit of the Just Flight 146 Professional. We've just got ourselves on board the aircraft. We carried out a couple of our originating checks, namely we've just fired up the APU and we've now got that on the bus. Running through our flight deck safety checks, the battery switches are on and the battery voltages are checked, both showing above 23 volts. Bus ties, both the AC and the DC bus ties are set to auto, and the standby verter and standby generator are set to ARM. Generators 1 and 4 are both in the off reset position. APU gen is on the bus. External AC is off, we've just removed the ground power cart from the aircraft. Your dampers can go on, as can the autopilot master and the avionics A and B masters. For the ground ignition we'll go to system A for the start this morning. Brake fans can stay off, anti-skid is on, and the lift spoilers can go on for both the yellow and the green systems. Coming over to our air panel, pack 1 and 2 are off. Ram air can go to shut. APU air can go on. Flight deck and cabin temperatures both set to auto. And we'll just adjust the temperature selectors there as well. Cabin fans can go on, as can the flight deck fan. And for the hydraulics, the AC pump can go on, PTU can go on, nav lights are set to high intensity, flight instruments, just cancel the caution there. QNH currently 1015, so we'll set that on the altimeters.
Air 40 Whiskey Juliet, contact ground 11.8, bye bye.
128 Whiskey Juliet, bye bye.
So we have 1015 set and cross checked, and on the HSI we're showing a heading there of 011, 011 on the right, and the same on the compass. We'll leave the HSI and nav for the time being. We're going to be flying a conventional SID for the departure. Flight annunciators will test. Everything looking good there, and on our caution and warning panel we have oil low pressure on all 4 engines. Of course we're expecting to see that. Fuel low pressure, ice protection, electrics, door not shut, park brake on, and screen heat selected off, all of which we're expecting to see with the aircraft in its current state. The autopilot is off, the yaw damper can go on. We'll get the flight directors on. So that's our preliminary cockpit prep complete. Just before we continue setting up the MCP, we'll head down to the CDU and we'll set that up for our flight. So coming down now to the CDU, and we'll first check the aircraft status. So we are a BAE 146-300, the navigation database is valid, and the drag and performance factors are both 0, they check against the flight plan. We'll go to Posinit. Reference airport is Birmingham, so Echo Golf Bravo Bravo. We're currently on stand 7. Moving on to the route page, the origin airport Birmingham, destination is Glasgow, Echo Golf Papa Foxtrot. Flight number will be Jersey European, so BE 400. We can activate that and we'll hit execute. Coming to the departures page, expecting to depart off runway 15, and it's going to be the Trent for Golf departure. And once again we'll hit execute. Back to the route page. So the Trent for Golf takes us out towards the Trent VOR. After that we'll be picking up the Upper November 57 airway. And that takes us out towards the Pole Hill VOR, which is Papa Oscar Lima. Will then be the Upper November 601. And that'll be on towards waypoint Ribble, Romeo India Bravo Echo Lima. And then that'll take us on to the Ribble 1 Golf arrival. So once again we'll hit execute, we'll come back to the departures and approach page. For the arrival, expecting the ILS runway 05. And as we said, it'll be the Ribble 1 Golf. And again we'll hit execute. Running through the legs page, we'll just make sure we've got everything correct versus the paper flight plan. So it's the Trent 4 Golf out towards the Trent VOR, then on towards Pole Hill, then on towards waypoint Ribble, and then inbound for the ILS 05. We've got a discontinuity in there at the moment, we'll leave that for the time being. Back to the init ref. The aircraft's already auto-sensed our weight, 40.6 tonnes, that is correct, so we'll insert that. The gross weight CFG 16.7. Reserves. We're holding Edinburgh as the alternate today, and our diversion fuel for Edinburgh is 2 tonnes. Cruise flight level will be flight level 280. And we'll be using a cost index of 35. Moving on to the takeoff page, it's going to be a flaps 18 takeoff. CFG 16.7, that's giving us a stab trim of 3.7, we'll set that later on. And for the V speeds we have V1 130, VR 132 and V2 137. We're going to be climbing initially at a speed of V2 plus 10, so 147 knots, we'll set that up once we come to set up the MCP later on. That's the CDU setup complete, we'll just brief the departure while we're down here. So once again expecting the Trent 4 Golf departure for runway 15. That is plate 10-3 Lima. We're going to be tracking outbound off the ILS DME initially, India Bravo, India Romeo, that's a frequency of 110.1. Out towards 1.8 DME or 900 feet, whichever is later, and then be making a left turn out towards the north, maintaining 210 knots until we're established on the inbound radial of 357 towards Trent. That's not going to be a problem for us today. Climbing up to an altitude of 6,000 feet, maintaining that until we're cleared higher by air traffic. Transition altitude is 6,000 feet. In terms of the terrain, there's no significant high terrain around Birmingham. The highest sector MSA is 2,500 feet. We do have a mast out to the west of our course inbound towards the VOR, up at around 1,500 feet. Weather-wise, it's a nice morning here. It's just above 10 degrees currently, so anticipating a little bit of icing as we come up through the cloud layer. Otherwise, though, the wind's straight down the runway. Visibility's good, so the conditions more than good enough if we want to return to the field. Anyway, that's the CDU setup and the brief complete. We'll continue on with our cockpit setup, and I'll come back to you again once we're more or less ready for the push and start.
Okay, all doors and hatches are closed, ready to connect.
Okay, so we just finished our preliminary cockpit setup. The passengers are on board, we've just closed up the aircraft doors, and as you'll have seen, the tug is now connected. Running through our before start checks, the briefing is complete. Brakes are set to park and we do have good hydraulic pressure. Hydraulics can come off. And just cancelling the caution. Fuel panel showing just below 3 tonnes on board in each of the main wing tanks, so 6 tonnes on board in total. That checks against the flight plan. Lights and notices. We have the flight deck emergency lights armed, fasten seatbelt signs can go on. And we have the cabin emergency lights armed with the no smoking sign set to auto. Air conditioning is set as required. Thrust levers are in the fuel off position. Altimeters are set. AC power is set as required. TMS we've set that to take off with a temperature of 9 degrees outside. That's giving us an N1 of 93%, and we've set that across the board. Speeds have been set and the flight directives are on. In terms of the autopilot modes, we've just armed up the altitude capture. The rest will be flying raw data initially. Trims. Again, we're looking for an elevator trim of 3.7 units. So that's set, and the rudder trim and aileron trim are set to neutral. So we are now ready for the push. The beacon can go on. Part brake can come off.
Starting pushback, and you may start engines.
We are cleared for the start. We'll just wait until the tugs commence the push before we begin the start. And we are now underway, so running through the start checks, the beacon is on, PAX and APU air can go off, engine anti-ice is off, brake fans are off, AC pump is off, fuel pumps can go on, start panel will set, so Startmaster can go on. We're starting the number 4 first. Transponder is set to TARA and we'll go to above for the climb. And again, we are cleared for the start. We'll be starting the number 4 first. So engaging the starter. Do you have N1 rotation? We'll just wait until we come up through 20% there until we introduce the fuel into the engine. And there's our 20%. So we can unlock the fuel lever, we'll move that into the fuel on position. And we do have a good light off, the EGT coming up. And just waiting on the number 4 to stabilise. So good start on the number 4, we'll start the number 3.
Hello, Speedbird 830 Delta, established 7 miles, wireless 28 left.
Speedbird 830 Delta, good morning, continue approach. Wind 290, 0 degrees, 10 knots.
Continue approach, Speedbird 830 Delta.
And there's our 20%. So fuel can go on. And again we have a good light off.
Operation complete. Set parking brake.
Okay, the aircraft is stationary, the park brake can go on.
Disconnecting tow, stand by.
He's disconnecting, again we have good pressure there on the yellow system. Just waiting on the number 3, that's now stable. Starting the number 2.
1.1 today.
121.1.678, straight back.
Ground crew want to disconnect, so we'll clear them off. And there's our 20%. So introducing the fuel onto the number 2. Again we have a good light off, the tug just clearing.
My lower to 3 exit Tango, the fleet line number 120, vacancy arrival 290 knots.
And a good start there on the number 2.
Tow is disconnected and bypass pin has been removed. Hand signal on the right. We'll see you next time and have a safe flight.
So he's clearing, he'll be off on the right, we'll keep an eye out for his signal.
China 3 X-ray Tango, good day to you, and cleared directed to Latmo.
Latmo, 933 exit.
And there's 20%. And fuel on for the number 1. Again, we have a good light off. There's our pin and our wave, so the ground crew are clear. And the number 1 just stabilising, so we have 4 good starts. The start selector can go back to the off position, start master can go off. And the off start checks, the start panel is set, engine anti-ice not required, generators can come on. External AC is off, of course we've already disconnected that from the aircraft. Brake fans are off, not required. Hydraulics can go on. Heaters are on. Speeds and N1 bugs are set. APU air is off. Packs can come on. And we'll get the engine bleeds on. And on the cabin air we'll go to recirc. And that's the after start checklist complete. So we are ready for the taxi. We'll be taxiing straight ahead initially. Taxi lights can go on. Runway turn off lights can go on. So as I say, we'll be taxiing straight ahead onto Echo. We'll then taxi out to the left onto Delta, back onto the right to join Alpha, and then taxiing all the way down Alpha for the holding point Alpha 1. Park brake can come off. We are all clear on the right. And same on the left. Fairly heavy here this morning, so just coming up on the thrust to get the aircraft moving.
8 Whiskey Yankee surface wind 280 degrees, 9 knots, runway 28 left, clear for takeoff.
Clear for takeoff, 28 left, runner.
We'll join left onto Echo at Delta 6, which is just up ahead. And we'll just wait until we've joined onto the main taxiway before we run the 4 takeoff checks. Once again, all clear on the right, there's nothing coming out of the apron being the exit. Just slowing the aircraft down a little bit for the turn.
Copied on the traffic for Balsamo, QNH 1014 maintaining 0 control airspace between 04 and Fox in India.
And again, all clear out to our left. So joining on to Echo, we'll take that down to Delta. We'll just get the aircraft straightened up. And running through our before takeoff checks, the brakes are checked, flaps. We'll set flaps 18 as per the takeoff calculation. So just waiting for the flaps to run out.
Dublin, good morning, it's Irish 281 airborne from Casement, passing 2,400 feet to 4,000 on a track 270 and our squawk 6320.
And we have flaps 18 indicated, flaps 18 set, and the takeoff is based off flaps 18. Flight instruments are checked. Trims, we have 3.7 on the elevator and neutral on the rudder and aileron. So just joining left onto taxiway Delta. And as I said, Delta leads round into Alpha, which you can see off at our 1 o'clock. And we'll just wait until we're straightened up on Alpha before we continue on with our before takeoff checks.
Irish 281, good day to you. I have radar contacts and climb flight level 120.
Clear to climb flight level 120, Irish 281.
Again, we do have a little bit of a cloud layer for the departure, so anticipating we're going to need the engine anti-ice on as we come up through that. We'll deal with that later on. And as we discussed, we're going to have that 210 knot speed restriction until we made our turn, but we're going to be climbing at around 140 knots and we'll only be accelerating really once we've made the turn anyway. So straightened up on Alpha, continuing the checklist. We'll carry out a takeoff config test. And no warning there, so the aircraft is configured correctly for the takeoff. Continuous ignition can go on. Flight controls. We have full up, full down, and neutral. Full left, full right, and neutral. Weather radar can go on. We'll take a range of 50 miles. We'll go for a tilt of about +4 degrees. And we'll assume we have been given clearance to line up, so the landing lights can go on. And we'll get these strobe lights on as well. We'll just continue down taxiway Alpha. We've still got a fair distance to go here till we reach the holding point. So I'll come back to you again once we're lined up on runway 15 and ready to go. Okay, so we are all set. We're nicely lined up here on runway 15. Just as a reminder for the takeoff brief, we're going to be climbing runway heading out towards 1.8 DME off the RLS. We're then going to be making a left turn out to the north to track inbound to the Trent VOR on a course of 357 and climb initially up to an altitude of 6,000 feet. Part brake is off. We'll come up to 40% on the M1. Allow the engines to stabilise. And take off.
TMS sets takeoff. Power set, N1 achieved.
That's checked.
Speed alive, both sides. 80 knots cross-checked. B1. Rotate.
Going back on the yoke.
2. Positive rate of climb, gear up.
We do a positive climb, the gear can come up. And just pitching to maintain our V2 plus 10 climb speed. We'll trim accordingly. And we'll just fly the aircraft manually until we're up through 1,000 feet above aerodrome elevation. So there's our 1,000 feet, the autopilot can go in. We'll come into heading hold and IAS hold. And just waiting until we're up through 1,500 feet, we'll come back to climb power. Keeping good on our DME as well. There's 1,500, so we'll hit sync on the TMS. We'll just wait until we've come through 1.8 DME and then we'll start the turn. There's 1.8.
Dublin Red Eye low running HSQ Yankee passing 2000, having a 0 right break.
And we'll come into VS. We'll hit sync. And we'll just lower the aircraft nose down to around 500 feet per minute rate of climb.
Whiskey Yankee identified, climb 50120.
The aircraft should now start to accelerate. Looking for 250 knots.
Climbing west, level 120 landing, 18 Whiskey Yankee.
We'll just keep a good eye on our speed bug there. As soon as we hit 250 knots, we'll come back into IAS hold. And as you can see, we're turning onto a heading of 030. We'll maintain that until we're on the radial inbound towards Trent.
VFTO, safe height speed, select flaps.
So speed is checked, the flaps can come up.
Irish 281, turn left Baker.
Baker Irish 21.
So as climbing away, we've got the city of Birmingham and the airfield just passing off on our left. Aircraft accelerating nicely. And again, just keeping a good eye on the speed and the radial. We'll wait until we're established on the radial before we carry out the after takeoff checks.
Ryanair 71 Fox Yankee, center flight level 130, speed 290 knots, inbound takeoff.
There's our 250 knots, so we'll hit IAS hold. And just coming onto that radial now, we'll stay in heading for the time being. Running through the after takeoff checks, the gear is up, the lights are out, the flaps are 0. TMS is set to sync, engine air is on, APU air is off, packs are on, APU can come off, and the igniters can come off. It's the after takeoff checklist complete. There's one to go. We'll assume air traffic's been kind to us today. Climbed us straight up to our cruising flight level, so flight level 280. And we'll arm that up, so we have 280, out capture there on the FMA.
Ryanair 71 Foxtrot Yankee, good day to you and descend to flight level 80. Continue to backfill.
And coming up through 6,000, so that's transition. Set 1013 on the altimeters. Just keeping an eye on that cloud layer. And we have 1013 set and cross-checked. Looks like we are going to be entering into the cloud, so we'll take the engine anti-ice on. And for the climb checks, the altimeters are set, PTU can go off. Pressurization is checked. Lights, we'll get the runway exit lights off. And the fasten seatbelt signs, we'll just leave those on a little bit longer until we're above this cloud layer.
Continue the Glasgow and descend to flight level 80, Ryanair 71 Fox Yankee.
So we'll stay in heading until we're overhead the Trent VOR, and then we'll come into RNAV as we track outbound. Just come up through 8,000 feet, we'll maintain the speed until we're up through 10.
Contact Dublin on 135, decimal 655 for higher. Bye-bye.
Contact Dublin on 135, 655, Irish 281, bye. Irish 281, Dublin, good morning, climb flight level 230. Climb flight level 230, Irish. Okay, thanks, 71 Fox Yankee.
Ryanair 8 Whiskey Yankee, increase the speed when able to 290 knots.
Speed 290, Ryanair 8 Whiskey Yankee.
Ryanair 8 Whiskey Yankee, contact Dublin 129.180, good day.
Dublin 129.18, Ryanair 8 Whiskey Yankee, good day.
Okay, so we're just coming up on 1 to go. Air traffic's actually levelled us off a little bit early down at flight level 240. That's fine by us though, we were going to be fairly marginal anyway getting up to flight level 280. As I said, we would have been straight up and down again. Showing 140 miles to run now towards Glasgow, still showing 0929 Zulu for the arrival, so about 30 minutes before we're back on the ground. We'll just wait until the aircraft's levelled off and then we'll brief the arrival, get the aircraft set up. It's going to get fairly busy here with such a tight sector, so we'll get as much as we can done ahead of time. In the meantime though, we'll just focus on the autopilot, make sure it does level us off at flight level 240.
Air 71 Foxtrot Yankee, contact approach 1211, good day.
Approach 1211, goodbye, Air 71 Fox Yankee.
And showing out capture there on the FMA.
Echo India Golf India Uniform, good day to you, and QNH at Dublin is 1014, and Baldon latch in the Orphan.
And levelling off at flight level 240, we'll come back on the throttles, around 88%. N1 should do us for the cruise power setting. Looks like that has us slightly accelerating still, so we'll just come back a little bit further.
Military is active and QNH is 1014, Echo India Golf India Uniform.
So power is set. Just turning overhead waypoint Niska, tracking out now towards Aslib. Showing 130 miles to run. At flight level 240 we're going to need about 100 miles for the descent. So we've got about 4 minutes here to get the aircraft set up and briefed for the arrival. Obviously we can do some more of that on the way down if needs be. The arrival into Glasgow, we're expecting the Rival 1 Golf as we discussed on the ground in Birmingham. It's plate 10-2 Alpha. That has us coming in from waypoint Rival, tracking in towards Aslib. Need to be flight level 260 at Aslib, 200 at waypoint Odogi, and then back at 250 knots by waypoint Vapi, with a restriction at 7,000 or flight level 70, max 230 knots at waypoint Lanark. In terms of Aslib, we've still got 40 miles to run there. We're obviously below that restriction already, so the main restriction we need to worry about is Odogi, flight level 200, so we've got 4,000 feet to lose. That means we need 16 miles, so we've got plenty of time there before we need to worry about that. Anyway, the arrival will bring us on to the ILS runway 05, and that's going to be plate 11-1. The frequency is 110.1. We can actually tune that up now.
Echo India Golf India Uniform, just confirm your right to the west for information only and maintain a VS4. Remain clear of control airspace.
We'll do the same on nav 2. So we have 110.1 on both sides. We'll tune up the Glasgow VOR on nav 1 for the time being. It's 115.4. We should pick that up a little bit sooner, so it'll give us a DME direct to Glasgow, and we can help use that to manage our descent. Just come back ever so slightly further on the power. You can see the speed still creeping up there. We'll go for 86.5% N1. Anyway, 110.1, final approach course is 048. Just set that on the first officer side for the time being, just as a bit of a memory aid for later on. Aerodrome elevation is 26 feet. Planning to intercept the ILS at 2400, down to the Cat 1 MDA of 226. That's a decision height of 200 feet, so we'll set that now.
Sorry, yeah, out to the west for 30 minutes and we'll fly with VF4. Echo India Golf India Uniform.
Roger.
So we have 200 set. For the missed approach, it's climb straight ahead to 3,000 feet or 5 DME, whichever's earlier, and then a right turn back towards the VOR at 3,000, or as directed by air traffic. In terms of the terrain, we do have some high terrain. MSA for the arrival is going to be 3,000 feet, but the highest MSA 4,900. Weather-wise, it's almost identical to what we saw on the ground in Birmingham actually. The QNH is 1015. It's around 10 degrees Celsius. There is a bit of cloud coverage, and that pretty much follows us all the way up towards Glasgow. In terms of our landing, planning to land 05. We'll try and vacate off at Delta, otherwise we're going to have to taxi quite long to come onto Bravo and then taxi back along Alpha for the apron. We'll see how we go. If it looks like we're going to make Delta, we might have to brake quite aggressively for that. If it looks like we're not going to make it, then we'll just leave off the brakes and roll through onto Bravo. In terms of the brakes, there's no auto brake fitted to the aircraft, so it's going to be manual braking, manual spoilers. Our alternate for the flight is Edinburgh, and for Edinburgh we need, we said plus 2 tons. Yep, 2 tons for Edinburgh. Expecting to arrive with 3.5, so we've got an extra 1.5 tons extra, and that's going to give us around 30 minutes of extra fuel. Anyway, that's the briefing complete. We've got about another 10 miles to run here until we hit the top of descent, so about another 1 minute. So we'll just keep an eye on our distance to run, and as soon as we hit that 100-mile mark, we'll commence our descent.
Ryanair 5830, wind 280 degrees, 9 knots, runway suited left, clear to land.
Clear to land, clear left, Ryanair 5830. 3,000 feet on a QNH 1314, Ryanair 71 Fox Yankee.
Chinook 15 Mike cleared to Latmo and contact approach 1211. Good day.
To Latmo and approach 1211. Approach morning, Shamrock 15 Mike, descending, flight level 80 to Latmo 27. 15 Mike, good day, expect further descent to Latmo. Lufthansa 6 November X-ray established. Lufthansa 6 November X-ray, Roger, Thomas Tower 118. Lufthansa 6 November X-ray 118.65.
Okay, so we've just come up over waypoint in Nepi. We're actually now 83 miles to run to the field. Just assuming here that air traffic's held us a little bit high. We are now cleared for the descent though, so we'll come down to flight level 110 initially. We'll go into Mach hold, we can arm that up. So we have 110, showing out armed, we are in Mach hold. We'll come back off the throttles. And we're looking for a descent rate of around 2,000 feet per minute with a ground speed of 400 knots. Although again, as we've been held high, we really want to descend as quickly as we can here, so we'll come more or less back to idle on the throttles. And we'll go into descent on the TMS. That's just going to manage the engine thrust such that we have enough bleed air for the pressurisation of the cabin and any anti-icing systems should we need them. Okay, it's giving us 3,000 feet per minute for the time being, so that should help get us back on profile. We'll set our speed bug once again, we're looking to descend at 280 knots. And as before, once the speed bug comes up onto our reference line there, we'll go back into IS hold. Coming up on 22,000 feet, that means we need 88 miles to run. We're showing 75. And we're just picking up the Edinburgh VOR there as well. Showing 80 miles there direct to the field. Speed bug just coming in. Once we capture that, we'll go into IS hold and then we can run our descent checks.
Dublin on 132.1580 goodbye. 3258 Shamrock 61 Trail.
So looking good now on the speed. There's IS hold. And coming up through 20,000, so we're pretty much back on profile. We'll keep the descent rate for the time being though. And through 20,000 feet, the seatbelt signs can go on.
Iris 281, contact London 129, that's 1380, fine. That's London 12938.
It's pretty quiet today. We'll assume air traffic's feeling kind, so we'll assume they've cleared us direct to the centre fix.
150 130 back zone.
We'll select that, we'll put that on the top line, and we have the centre fix as the active. We'll hit execute there. And the aircraft now going to fly us out towards the centre fix. Showing 70 miles to run there, just coming up on flight level 180. And we need to be 72 miles to run, so we're a few miles shy still. We'll keep the power back for the time being.
Shamrock 61 Juliet, good day to you. Descend to flight level 80.
And we're obviously going to be coming back into this cloud layer, so we'll take the engine anti-ice on.
Flight level 80, Shamrock 61 Juliet.
Running our descent checks, the PTU can go on. Pressurisation is checked. For the landing flap, it's going to be a flaps 30 landing. We're looking for a VREF of 126. We'll set that later on. And for the TMS we do have descent selected.
Liner 67, Papa Mike, contact Dublin 129er.180, bye bye.
129, 180, runner 67, Papa Mike, bye bye. Standby level 130, reduce speed 250, roll call, Dublin, good morning, Ryanair 67, Papa Mike, landing flight level 120, with that.
So just coming up on our 12,000 feet, we'll set the speed bug to 250 knots. And we'll come into VS. We'll hit sync, and again we're just looking for a vertical speed of minus 500 feet per minute.
Runway 28 left, clear to land.
Clear to land, 28 left, okay, tango.
We'll maintain the thrust, we'll maintain our vertical speed. We should get back to 250 knots, no problem before 10,000 feet. And once again, as soon as we reach our speed, we're going to IS hold. So coming up through 11,500, speed almost back at 250 knots.
Get 04, return on 0, Ryanair 3.
It's one of the things I really enjoy about flying these types of jets. You really have to think a lot more about what you're doing. The automation isn't really there to back you up. And even though we do have a basic FMC here, it doesn't really provide enough information that you can wholly rely on it. You really do have to manually calculate things as well. And for me, I think that's always good fun.
Okay, 416 identified, descent flight level 130. Descent level 130, access 1.
There's our 250 knots, so once again back into IS hold. And that deceleration has put us a little bit high now, so we'll come back on the throttles. We'll go with idle power, we'll see what that gives us in terms of a descent rate. And we'll keep 250 knots till we're around 30 miles from the airfield, then we'll come back to 200 knots. We can start thinking about configuring the aircraft. Just coming up through 10,000, so landing lights can go on. We'll cycle the seatbelt signs. And we'll say we're through transition, so the QNH 1015 once again.
Sir, as much as reduce speed 160 knots, contact tower 118 just 160 knots at max and 118 just 6,
and we have 1015 set and cross-checked. "9,000 feet, so we need 36 miles, showing 33. Ground speed's only 300 knots now though, so 2,000 feet per minute should have us trending back onto the profile. For the approach checks, the altimeters are set, fasten seatbelt signs are on, APU is not required, ignition will take on. That's the approach checklist complete.
Air 2 Kilo Alpha, good morning, line up runway 28 left.
Runway 28 left, Air 2 Kilo Alpha.
2 Kilo Alpha, wind 270 degrees 10 knots, runway 28 left, clear for takeoff.
Clear takeoff, clear left, Air 2 Kilo Alpha.
Ryanair 71 Foxtrot Yankee, contact ground 121.8.
Just coming up on 4,000, so another 1,000 feet to go. And we'll just reduce our vertical speed slightly further here. We don't really want to be levelling off before we hit that glide slope if we can avoid it.
Ryanair 172, so surface wind 280 degrees, 9 knots, runway 28 left, clear for takeoff.
Runway 28 left.
Anyway, as soon as we pick up that localizer, we'll turn slightly inbound towards the field. We're not going to go for the full intercept straight away. We're going to be arriving pretty much on height for the glide slope at our present distance, so we don't really want to be turning inbound early.
Shamrock 15 Mike, contact ground 121.8, bye bye.
And coming up on 12 DME, again, really surprised we're not picking up that localizer just yet. Just coming in now. We'll turn 90 degrees to the loc for now. And the loc there just passing through centre. It's not quite sensing correctly at this moment, so we're not going to arm it up just yet. There's 3,500.
Central left, notice 28 left at all times. Central left out restriction for Echo Charlie.
Still not quite visual with the field.
Wind check 280 degrees, 9 knots.
209 for Echo Charlie at the moment.
And showing 11 miles to run now. 3,300 feet. Again, just going to go into sync.
90, minus 209.
We'll reduce our vertical speed right back to around 200 feet per minute.
2 Kilo Alpha, contact Dublin 129 decimal 180, good day.
29018, right at 2 Kilo Alpha, bye.
And coming off on 10 miles, so as I said, really we want to be 3,000 feet at 10 miles. We're going to be pretty much bang on that. Hence why we don't want to turn inbound early, otherwise we're going to be high on the glide slope. You can see we are just below the glide slope currently there looking at the scale. We'll come on to heading of 340. We're not going to go for the intercept heading just yet. And we should be good now to start our intercept turn, so we'll come on to heading of 010. We'll arm up the localizer.
172, runway track 28 left, 2,600 feet, landing flight level 90.
And there's the loc, so we can arm up the glide slope as well.
Ryanair 172, identified, climb flight level 120.
Level 120, Ryanair 17. Hello, Ryanair 5 Kilo Delta, we're descending flight level 130 to Glasgow.
That speed just picking up again as we descend down the glide slope, so coming back to idle momentarily on the throttles, we'll set 160 knots.
5 Kilo Delta, good day to you, and descend to flight level 120.
And just coming up on our 8 miles, we'll take the gear down. We've got 3,000 feet set for the missed approach altitude. We'll take flaps 24.
Flight level 120, Ryanair 5 Kilo Delta.
Ryanair 172, turn right to Rulov.
Right turn Rulov, Ryanair 172.
And nicely maintaining 160, we'll maintain that for another mile or so. And we can go flaps 30. That's our landing flap configuration. In terms of our landing checks, landing gear is down 3 greens, flaps, we have flaps 30 indicated, brakes are checked, airframe anti-ice is off and the landing lights are on, so our approach checklist complete. We'll come back to VREF, which we said was 126 knots. Nicely visual now with the runway, you can see the airport quite clearly. We've got 2 reds, 2 whites there on the PAPI.
Shamrock 6-1 Juliet, vacate Sierra 4, right turn on Sierra.
Sierra 4, right turn Sierra, Shamrock 6-1 Juliet. And Ryanair 229, we are 40 minutes now.
Ryanair 2269er, thank you, there'll be 1 arrival.
That's what I said, Ryanair 229.
Still back idle, just letting the last of that speed bleed off. And coming up again now on the thrust levers.
1,000.
That's 1,000, checked we are stable.
Air 416, contact approach 1211, good day.
1211, I see 416 fine.
So nicely established on the ILS, just coming back onto speed. We'll disconnect the autopilot. Slightly out to the right of the runway centerline visually, so we'll correct for that. And back to 2 reds, 2 whites on the PAPI, looking good on the glide slope.
500.
That's checked, 500.
16, sending 80, passing 117, Boeing 3. 9 Mike with Bravo. I say 416, just you can expect to turn around here. Copy.
300. Minimums.
There's the MDA, we'll continue.
200.
And Delta is going to be pretty tight to make, so we'll just roll through, vacating off further down the runway.
40. 30. 20. 10.
There's touchdown. Coming onto the spoilers. And onto the brakes. Anyway, we'll vacate off onto Alpha, and once we're clear of the runway we'll start running through our after landing checks. So we can retract the spoilers, the flaps can come up. We'll get the weather radar off. Landing lights can go to the taxi position. Runway turn off lights can go on. Just getting the aircraft slowed down for the turn.
72, contact Dublin on 129 decimal 180, bye bye.
Dublin 129 180, runway 160,
Ryanair 5 Kilo Delta, descend to final 100.
75 over 100, Ryanair 5 Kilo Delta.
Yeah, we've just got a caution there showing hydraulics, sorting that out in just a moment's time. So running through the after landing checks, the air brakes are retracted, flaps are set to 0, lights, we'll just get the strobe lights off. Lights are set, transponder will leave, engine anti-ice is off, ignition is off, generators will leave for now, and likewise we'll leave the engines running. It's going to be a fairly short taxi here, we'll get the APU fired up. And again onto the brakes, slowing ourselves down for the turn. We'll make our way in towards the terminal, we'll try and find a spare parking spot. And the hydraulic caution there, clearing now. Looks like there's a few vacant bays off on our left, out towards the left of the CRJ, so we'll take one of those. Got a ground vehicle just coming up on our right, so we'll keep a good eye out on him. Okay, he's turning up in towards the apron, all clear on the left. And coming in towards the bay, the APU gen is on. APU is up and running. Take the taxi lights off. Same for the runway exit lights.
Alpha Kilo, picket Sierra 4, right turn Sierra.
Right, Sierra 4 off Sierra, Sierra.
Once again, no ground traffic coming down the taxiway. We'll turn onto the bay.
Right heading 19er, 5
And bring the aircraft to a stop. Part brake can go on. Again, we do have the APU generator on, the APU up and running. APU bleed air can go on, engine bleeds can come off. And we can shut down the engines.
0 on the bike, for Lima Red.
Final 5 Kilo Delta, low clear platform.
Platform direct turn, 5 Kilo Delta.
Transponder can go off. We'll get the seatbelt signs off. And the beacon can go off. Running through our shutdown checks, the brakes are set to park. Lights are off. Pressurization is checked. Hydraulics are off. Again, just cancelling the warning there in the caution. Generators 1 and 4 can come off. Thrust levers are in the fuel off position. Fasten seatbelt signs are off. Brake fans not required. The fuel pumps can come off. We'll just leave the left inner there for the APU. Engine anti-ice is off. The beacon is off. Transponder is off. And that is the shutdown checklist complete. So there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed another outing in the Just Flight 146 Professional. I would say mission accomplished on that one. I think the flight really helped me to get back up to speed with the aircraft. And I'd actually forgotten what a fun and interesting little jet the 146 is to fly. I'm very much looking forward to the Microsoft Flight Simulator version of the aircraft. I know that many of you are as well. I gather that things are moving along quite nicely in terms of its development, so hopefully I'll be able to show you some content on that in the not too distant future. Anyway though, once again, if you did enjoy this flight, please consider giving the video a like. If you want to see more content from the channel, then please consider subscribing as well. As ever, a huge thank you to my channel members and patrons for all of your support. It's very much appreciated. I hope that all of you are having a great day wherever you are. Take really good care, and I will see you all again soon.